Who is Anatol Lieven? He's a graduate from Cambridge University. He's a British author and policy analyst. He's also senior research fellow on Russia and Europe at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Formerly, he was a journalist and later professor at Georgetown University in Qatar and at the War Studies Department of King's College in London. Anatol Lieven recently published a short piece in Responsible Statecraft in which he warned that the Russia-Ukraine war might slip out of control and that this might be a calamity for all of humanity, not only for Ukrainians or Ukrainians and Russians. I will post the link to that article titled "The Horrible Dangers of Pushing a US Proxy War in Ukraine" in the description box of this YouTube. So welcome once again to one of my YouTubes, one of my broad YouTubes, which basically touches upon different hotspots and different issues across the world, from the MENA and Gulf region to the Southern Caucasus and far beyond. Now, you might ask yourself, why is it that today, on a Sunday, on Labor Day, on the 1st of May, what is it that prompted Harry to sit in front of his computer with that wonderful carpet as a background image and talk about Anatol Lieven, about his article, and about the Ukraine-Russia war? Well, what encouraged me is also what encouraged Anatol Lieven, I believe, to write his article. If you've been following this war in Ukraine, you will have noticed that one of the characteristics is that there have been lots and lots and lots of people visiting Ukraine, showing solidarity and support, standing shoulder to shoulder with President Zelensky, and all of them saying that Russia is at fault, which it is, that Russia is not performing well in its military special operation, which is also correct, and that the Russian war against Ukraine is illegal in international law. That also is correct. But what they've also been doing, I believe, everyone from our own Prime Minister Boris Johnson to everybody else, including very prominent and senior political figures in the United States, the Foreign Secretary Antony Blinken, the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, the leader of the House, Nancy Pelosi, is there now as I'm recording this YouTube episode on a visit to Kyiv in Ukraine. Now, you might wonder, what is happening there? Of course, there is support. But there are also signs, in my opinion, of concern. Concerns, incidentally, that I raised not last week, but pretty much at the beginning of the Russian war against Ukraine. And if you go to one of my earlier YouTubes, you will see my thoughts encapsulated in there, my concerns and caution encapsulated in that YouTube episode as well. But what prompted, I believe, Anatol Lieven to write his article and then have a short interview with Democracy Now! And that prompted me also to share this short episode with you, is that in a recent visit a few days ago by the US Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, he started talking not only about the defensive posture of the Ukraine against an illegal Russian aggression, but against Russia itself, saying that the strategy now is to weaken Russia and win the war. And that worries me. That worries me because despite all the visits, despite all the support, as I said, everybody's been to Kyiv to profess support for Ukraine, with the exception of the German president, who was declared persona non grata, and the French president, recently re-elected, who apparently was furious that he had not managed to go there as one of the first visitors. But all that being equal, that policy, that statement by the US Defense Secretary, that now the strategy is to weaken Russia and win the war, is frightening. It's frightening on a few levels, and I'll just leave some food for thought with you. As you've become used by now, I don't provide answers. Not that I don't have answers, I have my own answers, but it's not my place to tell you how to think and what to think. It's my place to share some facts and figures with you and then allow you to draw your own conclusions. So I would first of all take you to the Cold War lessons of decades between East and West, between the USSR and its allies and the West. It was one of containment, not of pushing back Russia and reconquering territories. Have we forgotten that? And it kept the peace, and that was why it was called a Cold War. Deterrence on both sides, neither side would overstep the mark. Then, let me remind you also of the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. Have we forgotten that? We were so close to a nuclear confrontation, which incidentally would be far, far worse today than then. I have said, going back to my first YouTube episode on this matter, of which I'm no expert, by the way, so I'm using my democratic right, as it were, to share my thoughts with you on an open source social media platform, the wonderful YouTube. I've said it and I'll say it again. We're not dealing with a fourth-rate military power here, despite the abysmal performance of the Russian army, despite the fact that it's bogged down, despite the fact that it couldn't and didn't produce the results that President Putin had thought it would. 3-4 weeks in, out, control of Ukraine, change of regime. That didn't happen. All that didn't happen, and it taught us a lot of lessons. But we're talking about Russia, which is a foremost nuclear power in the world. Do we really want to go there and poke the bear in the eye so hard that it would then, if we consider him psychotic, if we say that he's suffering from Parkinson's or from thyroid cancer, or that it's not him at the cathedral in Moscow on Easter Sunday, if we're basically building up a case to say that Putin is a danger, isn't it worse then to poke the bear, to provoke him at a time when he might actually undertake what we would consider irrational behavior? Should we not measure a little bit more our actions? And let me ask you, is it really President Zelensky who is taking all these decisions, or is he being advised by other people to do what he's doing? The man was willing to sign a document on neutrality of Ukraine. He said that he's not going to go into NATO, so might as well do the neutrality card. He's been talking one thing and then saying something else, and the visits to the country keep on coming. And I'm just wondering, who's egging him on, who's advising him, or is it basically him becoming more and more confident of the nature of this warfare? Let me take this a little bit further. If Russia becomes bogged down in a war that we now, whether here in the UK or in the US, are considering to be a long-term war of not days and weeks, not even months, but of years. What's going to happen to the global economy? What's going to happen to us in Europe? We are the most exposed, vulnerable party in this, not the United States, not North America. Us in Europe, the European Union and its allies. Put global economy to one side. If Russia is so much bogged down in the Ukraine war, will Georgia then be tempted to take back the separatist regions of Abkhazia and South Ossetia? Would Moldova, that tiny, rather poor country, be encouraged by EU support to move against the Transnistria separatists, what is pompously called the Pridnestrovian Moldovan Republic? And as an Armenian, let me ask you this question. What if those Russians who are guaranteeing the security of the Armenian population in Nagorno-Karabakh, what if they're no longer able to provide the security? What would happen? Would Azerbaijan's President Aliyev do what he's dreamt of doing since day one, which is retake the whole of the enclave of Nagorno-Karabakh and get rid of all the Armenians there? I've been hearing of Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan of Armenia talking about human rights, not self-determination for Nagorno-Karabakh. I've heard people talk about the rapprochement between Armenia and Turkey, which a few weeks ago was so active and was so buzzing with optimism, and now has quietened down because Turkey is backing down from that process. What will happen to Nagorno-Karabakh? What will happen to the Armenians? What will happen to the Republic in an increasingly bellicose Southern Caucasian region? I don't support the Russian war against Ukraine. I've said it's illegal. I've said it's stupid. And I've said that Russia is reaping losses from this special military operation. However, is weakening and winning against Russia the right policy? This is why I was drawn to this article by Anatol Lieven, and why I was drawn to his very short interview on Democracy Now! And this is why I am worried. Here in Europe, we might be on a Brexit high. Well, it's not really a high, but never mind. We might not be within the EU, but we are in Europe. So I'm worried. And let me remind those people who are saying, no, we're going to fight and we're going to reconquer all the land. What? Is Ukraine going to get back all of the Donbas region, the Donetsk region, the Crimea Peninsula? We're not playing a game. This is not a game. We in Europe were lulled into a sense of security for years and years, since the Second World War, where Europe was thinking of economic warfare, not military warfare. And now suddenly the war has come knocking at our doors. So we should be cautious. This is not a game. It's not a game with toy soldiers. We are dealing with real lives. So let us think a bit more intelligently, a bit more independently, perhaps. Or else we, again, I come back to us in Europe. We in Europe will also end up carrying the can of this war. So please do not dismiss what I'm saying as the rants of somebody who loves Russia and hates Ukraine. Far, far from it. or somebody who is a pacifist or an appeaser. Far, far from it. I'm just saying what somebody who's done more policy analysis on Afghanistan, on the Caucasus, than I have ever done, Anatol Lieven. And there are many other people like him. Yes, we need to stop the war, and we need to teach Putin a lesson that war is not the answer. But we also have to understand the psychology of the aggressor, of the foe. Isn't that one of the lessons we've been taught in military strategy? Isn't that what then leads to conflict resolution? I leave it with you on Labor Sunday and hope for the best.